Welcome back to the analysis for part two of our conversation with Dr. Michael Hudson on the collapse of antiquity.
I think the character of early Christianity is what is in the Lord's Prayer.
Mm.
Forgive them their debts as we forgive the debtors. Uh, Christianity, especially Roman Christianity, made a travesty of this. They used the word sins. They forgive us our sins as we forget the sins of the debtors. And what they meant was every kind of sin except economic.
A reminder, if you haven't done so already, to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications so you don't miss our material. I want to do a little bit of name dropping here because it's actually a surprisingly fun book to read because of just how culturally rich it is and how many of these references of philosophers and playwrights and reformers get thrown in there. People who are familiar with the plays of William Shakespeare might know Coriolanus, but there's a very different take on him here as someone who was being protested by the poor indebted and basically joined the enemies of Rome, the Volscians, and attacked Rome because of his class alliance. It was not to his people, it was a class alliance.
That's
And
right.
that's
The same thing had happened in Greece under Alcibiades,
mm.
who ended up as an opponent of Athens.
And then we get to Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar, you mentioned already, he was a mild reformer. I think there was sort of the concern that he was, at the risk of drawing too many contemporary comparisons, a bit like maybe an FDR figure who started out as a mildly reformist elite and became more of a reformer as time went on. And there was that kind of fear about Julius Caesar as someone who was really just alleviating things for the wealthy, but that he might become more sympathetic to the plight of the masses. And something I
Yeah.
didn't know that was in this book was that Brutus was a moneylender charging 48% interest.
Yes, that was. Let me talk about Caesar first. He was very brilliant as a political maneuverer as well as a general. He borrowed a lot of money to run for office and paid the money. He was able to play the political game as a very, very intelligent maneuverer. And what they people were really frightened about with Caesar was that he was independent. And they didn't want independent people. I mean, just like in an American democracy, the last thing you want is a president who's independent and who's a leader. You want a president who's working for his campaign contributors. Well, that's what most of the heads of Rome usually were. They were leaders of the oligarchy, and that was the job of the Senate. But here was Caesar being independent and trying to retain a solvency for the economy as a whole, and they didn't want an independent head of Rome any more than you would have modern democracies wanting an independent president. And so Caesar was accused of kingship. And what did the kings do? The kings canceled the debts and redistributed the land, and that was the invective that was used against Caesar. And for Brutus, it turned that brings us back to Cicero, who Cicero was appointed the local head of Silesia. That controlled Cyprus at the time. And one day people came to him from Rome and said, yeah, since you're the ruler here, there's we've lent some money. The local Cilicians have borrowed money and 42%. And Cicero said, but the legal rate of interest is only 12%. I'm supposed to be the governor here and I'm supposed to represent the rule of law. That's what all my rhetoric is all about. And they said, well, here's the document. What are you going to do? And then Cicero found out that the so-called debt collectors were really working for Brutus, and it was Brutus who had made the loan at 42%. And when his collectors asked for armed guards to go and kill everybody who wouldn't pay the debt and grab all their land and enslave their families, Cicero really said he felt very bad about that. But he wrote to his friends, but what else could I do? So much for Cicero.
So much for Cicero. And this trend of like, Julius Caesar, of course, is and you kind of write that this was maybe the last chance for there to have actually been reform that could have gotten Rome back on the right course. But the assassination of Julius Caesar was nothing really particularly new. In fact, these assassinations had kind of accelerated since Tiberius in 133 BC, correct?
And then in the whole 80s, you had the wealthiest Roman generals opposed to a very popular military general who's had the troop support. And each general began to put up lists of all the followers of their opponents who had to be assassinated. And if you assassinated them, you got to grab all their property, or at least you get a portion of the property that they had after you'd killed them. And so basically, if people wanted property, you would just go and add the name of somebody whose property you wanted to the list of supporting the opponent of the general. And you had just a vicious civil war between Marius, who was the popular general at the time, and Crassus and other people who were supporting the opposite end.
Right, right. And I guess this starts to move us into, and you mentioned it already, but Jesus and Jesus's references of the Jubilee year. Can you talk a little bit both about what this movement was and what the practices of early Christianity were, as it was, including their practices regarding usury?
Well, when Jesus gave his first big sermon reported in Luke, he unrolled the scroll of Isaiah to the point where Isaiah was calling for the year of the Lord, meaning the Jubilee year.
Mm,
And Jesus said that was what his destiny was, what he had come to proclaim. And there was a very apparently wide support among the Jewish population advocating restoration of the Jubilee year against the rabbinical school that basically opposed it and represented. Luke said that the Pharisees loved money. And their leading rabbis had their debtors sign documents. They would borrow money and they would waive their rights under the Jubilee year. And that's what Jesus wanted to change. And so the after Jesus gave his sermon, a lot of the population got very upset because they said they didn't think it was fair to cancel the debts. And so the leading Jewish leaders went to the Roman proconsul and said, well, we can't put him to death, but you can because he's seeking kingship. They knew the magic word of invective that the Romans didn't like, kingship. And so it was the Romans who agreed to put Jesus to death. But the movement was way beyond of Christianity, was beyond Jesus. And we know from the scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls that I've described in the preceding volume of this, the trilogy I'm working on the history of debt. I cite the scrolls that were sort of madrashas of the all of the debt cancellation advocacy of the Bible. Well, what developed by about the 4th century was something that occurred not only in Rome, but all the way to Persia. Throughout the whole ancient world, there was sort of a revulsion at the decadence of extreme wealth in the face of the extreme poverty and bondage that had developed. And this decadence, especially apparently women, especially the women who were the wives of the leading aristocrats, became Christians. And finally, you had Constantine make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire.
mm,
Well, there's obviously one problem. What do you do if you're making Christianity the official religion, and the origins of Christianity were centered on the Jubilee year? You cancel the debts, you liberate the debt bondage people, you restore the lands to them, redistribute the land, and make people independent, and you protect the poor instead of enslave them. Well, you had to change the whole character of this, and I think the character of early Christianity is what is in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive them their debts as we forgive the debtors. Uh, Christianity, especially Roman Christianity, made a travesty of this. They used the word sins. They forgive us our sins as we forget the sins of the debtors. And what they meant was every kind of sin except economic sin, except the sin of creditors. Under St. Augustine, it was largely sexual. And all of a sudden, the focus of Augustinian Christianity became sexual egotism, not the wealth addiction of the creditors. Because after all, if the leaders of the Christian church, the archbishops and the bishops, were all going to be taken from the wealthy families, you'd hardly have them criticize their own wealth. And so you had you stripped away from Roman Christianity the economic and social context that had guided early Christianity.
Hmm.
And you also the great aim of Christianity was its anti-Semitism. The last thing it wanted was Jewish Christians because they knew the original Christianity, and because that evolved out of Judaism
Right.
as a whole. And so you had the first great the excuse for the expelling not only the Jews but for reformers was done by probably the most evil saint in Christianity, although it's hard to say who's the most, Cyril of Alexandria.
Hmm.
Who Alexandria was had a very large Jewish population, and Cyril organized big pogroms to kill the Jews. And in fact, anybody who could read the book, the one thing that the Roman Christians hated were people who could read, because if you could read, you'd read the Bible, and if you read the Bible, you'd know that there was a clash. So I think the most famous person that Cyril killed was Hypatia, a woman who was a mathematician and
Most
was one of the
brilliant
most
philosophers
brilliant.
of the time, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and he sent his thugs, Peter the Hammer, down to the seashore where they grabbed seashells, and scraped all of the skin off her body, so there'd be no memory. That was the Christian way of killing. So first you had
Hmm.
Cyril and having a council at Ephesus, calling on the Roman military to kill all of his opponents, and you had Christianity hijacked by Cyril, and then again when in the wealthiest part of the Roman Empire by this time, the fourth and fifth centuries, was North Africa. Egypt and Hippo, the old Carthaginian area, were the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. That's where the grain was made, and the Christians there were opposed the creditors. They opposed the Romans. They said, no, what the Romans are doing is not Christianity. The Rome wanted to them to turn over all of their sacred books so that they could be destroyed. You can't have Christianity as the medieval Christians realized if people can read the Bible. Because if they read the Bible, they see that Christianity, basically, under the Roman Christianity, fights against everything that the Bible is all about. So the North African Christians, many of them refused to turn over the sacred books, and they were killed. Uh, and so the finally you had Augustine coming to power, and he sponsored the pro-Romans, and there was a civil war that went on decade after decade, preventing the local Roman landowners from indebting the population, from basically enserfing them, and Augustine called in the Romans to take away their churches, to give him their churches. So essentially, Augustine expropriated the Christian churches and made them his own deviant Christianity, form of, I hate even to call it Christianity, it's really Augustinianism, in a wave of violence. And Peter Brown, who's the main writer of historian of this period, rightly states that Augustine is the true founder of the Inquisition. And ever since, the Roman Church became the Church of the Inquisition. And that's what I talk about in the third volume of my trilogy, where I pick up matters with the Crusades. So what Rome bequeathed to the West was not only creditor-oriented law, but a creditor-oriented Christianity. This is what you have in American evangelism today. King Jesus will make you rich. And essentially that's became Christianity as it evolved in the West, when finally in the 11th century, Roman Christianity, there were 5 churches that survived the decline of the Roman Empire: Antioch, Jerusalem, Byzantium became the key. The real what survived from the Roman Empire was the Byzantine Empire and its church, which was Orthodox Christianity. And Orthodox Christianity maintained many of the qualities of original Christianity, including a debt cancellations when there was a crop failure or a freezing, a frost that killed the crops and caused a loss of land and indebtedness. You had the Byzantine, you had Constantinople as the main bishopric, with Antioch, Jerusalem, and Rome became really a backwater until you had the Norman invasion of Europe, and Rome made deals with William the Conqueror in England, and before that, Norman conqueror of Sicily, that if you will conquer the land, we will bless you if you agree that you are the feudal serf of the Pope. And all these, the kings of England, the kings of Sicily and southern Italy, were all the feudal pledged fealty to the Pope, that organized armies to basically have yet a new crusades with new inquisitions under the Dominicans against Christians who didn't agree with Roman leadership, whether it's the French Cathars or ultimately the Crusades looted Constantinople and basically destroyed its ability to resist the what became the Ottoman takeover in time. So essentially, you had this split at the time, and most people look at Western civilization as just the continuity of Rome, without realizing how after the empire itself under Augustine made yet another break from the Near East that continued to be the wealthy solvent part of the empire in Constantinople and the Near East.
And you say that by the time we get into the 4th century or 5th century AD, and we get the Vandals coming in and taking they take, what do they take? They take Hippo. You say that by that time the economic devolution that had happened was such that there was practically no resistance, that the military loyalty had been the fact they had wiped out their opponents and instituted such a rentier state meant.
Well, it's not simply that there was no resistance. The people went over to the side of the Vandals, and you
Right.
had a lot of churchmen saying, "Why is it that the Roman Christians are going over to the side of the Vandals? It's because they have more freedom. They're the Democrats. They're overthrowing the feudalism. That's why they're going over to them." And there was an admiration of the Vandals coming in, the Germanic tribes, because they were the progressives, and of of course the people went over to their side. You couldn't have had just a few vandals taking over the vast armies of North Africa and the rest of Europe if the people weren't supporting them.
Right, right. I want to bring this into the contemporary moment. And we've already been, of course, connecting dots throughout this conversation. But you say there is a disturbing trend among contemporary classicists to basically sidestep the history that we have been going through today, and that they're really following the lead of neoclassical economists. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, here's the problem. Most historians don't study economics, and what they do study is the kind of economics that you're taught in universities, and that's neoliberal economics. And neoliberal economics doesn't study history. Because if it studied history, it would know that societies polarize as a result of debt, and they'd know what I describe in the Collapse of Antiquity, and they'd realize that instead of society, there being automatic stabilizers that don't require kingship. Automatic stabilizers mean the free market, the market of wealthy individuals, and just the market will always provide an optimum solution. You don't need any regulator of the market. Any regulation of the market is bad. Well, all earlier civilization, from the first time we can pick up written records in the Bronze Age, there was always a public override to the market, and the role of kings and churches and the whole ideology that people were taught in their religion and their politics was you have to shape the market in a way that will promote overall economic growth. And the primary way in which you have to shape the market is to prevent the debt overhead from leading to a transfer of labor and property from debtors to the creditors. You have to keep the economy free enough so that citizens can serve in the army and perform public work, and you don't let a creditor class evolving. So all of that today, that's called socialism,
Hmm.
or Biden will call it autocracy. Well, it's not autocracy. That's the irony that Greece and Rome and medieval Europe have not done a good job in preventing oligarchy from developing as a financial oligarchy and as a landlordship oligarchy, with the financiers turning public utilities into private monopolies to get monopoly rent,
Right.
along with interest and land rent. Well, that's basically the dynamic that occurs. And not only has economic history been taken out of the curriculum, but most classical historians begin the history of civilization with Greece and Rome, as
Hmm.
if it began without this mixed economy, without the 3,000 years of the Bronze Age and late Neolithic takeoff that I describe in the first volume, and forgive them their debts.
Is it safe to say that we have adopted the model of a failed state model as our economic model?
Yes, you've put it quite succinctly.
Is this something, when we look at the practices of debt forgiveness and when we look at how people have understood these principles before and applied them very productively, is there any reason other than sheer political power and campaign contributions, is there any reason we couldn't take up that subject successfully today and reinstate citizenship, equality, a greater sense of equality at least, and a productive economy again today?
Well, in order to do that, you'd have to have a definition of what is the alternative. And the neoclassical economics says there is no alternative. Margaret Thatcher and Ayn Rand are the economic models for
Right.
today. And if you believe there's no alternative, then you're really not going to take steps to create a more balanced economy. And that really, in that sense, you could say that the fight between the North America and the NATO countries against the remaining 85% of the world's population is a fight between an oligarchic society and a mixed economy, wanting to use governments to shape markets in order to promote general prosperity and liberty for the population as a whole.
Hmm. And you use the term in your book, you call that democratic liberty as opposed to oligarchic liberty.
That's right. Except the meaning of democracy seems to only be successful when you have a state strong enough to prevent an financial oligarchy from destroying democratic principles.
Well, you've certainly given a lot to think about in this conversation. I also really encourage people to pick up this book and read it. Like I say, it is an authoritative account, but it also is a great joy to read because it is so culturally rich. And people who have an interest in history, who have an interest in drama, an interest in philosophy, are all going to find that this is a really invigorating book to read. So, Michael
Well,
Hudson, thank you so much for being here. This was a pleasure. Thank you.
well, thank you for reading the book and understanding it so well and bringing it out in this discussion.
And if you enjoyed that content, consider going to our website, hitting the donate button so we can produce more like it. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.